Life was very enjoyable, very active, fun, adventurous person. Um, Loved being outdoors all the time, whether that's walking, mountain climbing, any sports, any activity at all. But my main thing was horses. Ever since I was four, um, horses have always been a big passion for me. And yeah, that never stopped. I sort of lived my dream with horses, did, a lot of riding, a lot of competing. Um, so yeah, extremely active, and did family days out, family holidays, just in general, just enjoying life, just being part of the world is was the most enjoyable thing. I'd never heard of CES um, when it all happened to myself. I never knew anything about red flags, nothing at all. Um, so in general, all in all, it was a very scary, frightening experience. Um, I mean, my experience started just generally being at work, and started getting some symptoms. Just not thinking much of it to start with, but when they started getting worse, obviously you then contact your doctor to find out what is it you need to do, or if there's a problem. And that was probably the very first time speaking to the doctor on the phone when he had mentioned something called red flags, and I still at the time did not have a clue what that was. There was no mention straight away of Cauda Equina, just a red flag. So he expected me to go to the hospital. He told me to bypass A&E, which he managed to get me to do. And then being at the hospital again, there was still no mention of CES or anything. No one again mentioned anything about any more red flags or any symptoms. It was just, I don't know, yeah, it was just all blank to start with. It was very blank. It wasn't until being left for a few days back and forth to the hospitals that when I eventually got an MRI scan done, that the word Cauda Equina syndrome was mentioned. And again, still at that point, I didn't have a clue what it was. Nobody at the hospital explained what this Cauda Equina syndrome was. I was just sort of still left until I was then rushed to another hospital to have emergency surgery again. Again, still at that point, nobody had talked to me. Nobody had mentioned what this is, what part of my body it was, what it was doing to me. It was still an unknown. It was still a scary thing until I got to the place I needed to be at that point, that the doctor then sat in front of me and then explained what Cauda Equina syndrome was. And yeah, my heart sank. I thought everything in my life was about to end. It was just gonna stop. But without this emergency surgery, then yeah, there was not going to be any much hope for myself. But yeah, it was probably the most frightening experience of being told what Cauda Equina was at that point. But up until then, just never heard of it, didn't have a clue. Yeah, when I see people joining the group, it's great. To me, it's great that they found the group, but it's sad also that they've had to join the group. Um, since having the group there, it's been really interesting to see how many people, because like when I was told about what Cauda Equina was and how rare it was, not many people are diagnosed with this. It's actually really interesting to actually see how many people do join and getting to know their stories of why, and how it came about for them. So it's great that they found the charity, they found who we are, and we can all talk and share stories and help each other. So they've got some support there. But it is really worrying of how many people out there are actually still getting diagnosed with it. To start with, when the charity set up, at that point, I think at the very early stages, I was still seeing a lot of people saying, I wasn't diagnosed until a few days, a few weeks. They were back and forth, and or they didn't know where to turn to, or what else they've done. They've been to a doctor or they've been to a hospital, and yet they've still been turned away. But I think as the years have gone on with the charity, I've not personally seen as many people. There are still some that are being, diagnosed late. But I have started seeing a lot of more stories coming through of being diagnosed quickly. So their operations happen quickly. So their outcome, it's great seeing all these stories of, I was, I had surgery within 48 hours and now, I feel, they still want to be part of the charity and listen to the other people's stories. But I think I am seeing a lot less than it was before, which is amazing. So I do believe that's the charity's working, the Pathfinders, everything is starting to sort of really take place, because even I'm hearing stories from other nurses and doctors when I go and see them and speak to them, how they've learned a lot more about Cauda Equina syndrome now. Unfortunately, after my emergency surgery, I was then just sent back home. So I didn't really have access to anything or know anybody or where to turn to. I was left for 6 months with no help at home. Still not able to move, in a lot of pain. I had no aides at home. I tried reaching out to nurses and doctors. But all they kept saying is, well, you're not in our district, or no, we're unable to help you because you've had the surgery, you should be fixed. And that's all I kept hearing over and over again. It wasn't until I reached out to a spinal nurse where I had the emergency surgery done, and she had mentioned about spinal clinics in Salisbury. It might be good to maybe reach out to them. So she wrote them a letter. They then responded. They sent me a letter to say, we've got a bit of an opening coming up in 4 months' time. We'd like you to come over to us and do a couple of days with us so we can help you out and see what it is you need. And I was really relieved. Yes, it was a bit of a wait. But when I finally got there, and then they realised my extent of my inability to do anything or the situation I was in, they were able to assist it. I ended up staying a lot longer, and they assisted me with wheelchairs, catheterizations, bowels, how to move around the house, how to help myself. They gave me a lot, but even from then, they weren't able to just sort of extend that out. It wasn't until somebody had mentioned that they heard on social media somebody by the name of Claire. This is before the charity actually became a charity. I reached out to her and we shared stories. And, she sort of pointed me in some directions of who to turn to, who I could speak to, and then from that point I was able to then reach out to a lot more people to get a lot more help. When I was approached about the Lost Tribe, about being part of the book, and sharing my story, I was more than happy to. I think people out there really need to know what it is that people like us have been through, and why, in theory, we shouldn't have been through it, but it was great to share my side of the story of the whole process of what happened, the delays, the lack of aftercare and everything else. So to get my story, to share it with other people so they could really understand that they weren't alone, that there were other people out there that, have been through this and that can relate. I just think I just wanted to help people. I just wanted people to sort of say, you're not going through this on your own. There's plenty of people out there you can reach, now with social media around and things, like there was so many people you could reach out to. So being part of the Lost Tribe was absolutely amazing. And also for myself to have read the other stories of what they've been through and how, in some ways similar, we're very similar of what's gone on, but again, different in different avenues. It was, all the sort of different backgrounds we come from, what we've been through, what we did have and what we didn't have. It was, it did feel for me, you know, great, you know, I can go and help a lot more people out there. That my story might change someone else's life, that, you know, especially when it comes to being very depressed through this condition, which, you know, I completely relate to. Having gone through severe depression and, you know, suicidal things, to show that, you know, you're not alone on this journey. I think that really was, for me, very empowering to give my story to other people, to say, look, you know, you can make it through this, you can do this. You know, it's that, you know, there's a world of people out there that would more than happy to help. And yeah, I just think, yeah, I think that's the most empowering thing. It's just giving my story to other people to read, to know that they're not alone. When you see other people share those stories and you can relate to everything they say, and you think, wow, you know, what's the coincidence? You know, is this the same for everyone? But again, it's not always the same for everyone. But when you see the stories shared the same, you just think, you just get like a big sigh of relief. And it's not a horrible, you know, it's just like, okay, I'm really sorry you've been through this, but I can relate to what you've done and what you've been through. And you just feel like you just need to connect to those people. And just knowing that you're not ever alone, that those experiences and everything that you share are very similar to those, can help you through life. It can sort of give you something. It will just give you something there in your mind that you can take hold of. And again, those stories can just be shared with other people and other people, and just hopefully just becomes part of something a bit bigger. It's I always thought my journey, you know, I thought I was the only one that went through just that ordeal on my own. That's how I felt. I felt like it was just me, nobody else. And I thought, am I just abnormal? But when you start hearing more people go, well, no, this is what I went through. And I thought, oh, actually, no, I'm not the silly one. I'm not the one, you know, going through this alone. So to have other people in, even if they're not close to me or if they're a million miles away, I love it because you can still then talk to those people and share those experiences and just get it off your chest. So some of my achievements, I think my first one, my first year, after being wheelchair bound for so long, was in general my first one was being able to walk again. That was my very first big achievement of constantly going to physio 2 to 3 times a week, to sort of gain strength, to gain function, to gain something back. So my very first one was my aim to walk. My main goal I was heading for was to make sure I can get back on a horse again. So that for me was, yeah, first one was learn to walk, as they always kept telling me, you know, walk before you can run. And then from there, I think it was then to learn to respect my new body, to respect the changes that I was going through, and learn to live. It was not so much learn to live with it, it was to cope. It was for me, it was to cope with what I was going through, how I had to adapt of how I was moving, my physical side, my mental side. And then from there, I think everything else very, very slowly started falling into place. Yes, I still have a lot of ups and downs. I still have a lot of mental health issues. I was, you know, taking a few steps back now and again. But once I got up walking with my crutches, and able to do that little bit more of going out a little bit longer, being able to stay in the car longer, all those little things were my achievements. So if I could sit at go to a restaurant and just sit at a table for longer than 10 minutes, that was a massive achievement for me. for not being in so much pain. And then again, you had the battle with managing all your medications to know what you're taking, to make sure you were coherent, and what you were doing, you were able to do it and enjoy it. So yeah, it was all the little things in life over the years. I think every day is an achievement, every single day, of just being able to get up in the mornings to go, right, I'm going to go for a walk somewhere, or I'm going to go, I don't know, go and be with some friends and socialize. I think in general, I took for granted before, of just everything, of just being able to walk, you know, just toilet, bathing. You don't realize how much you do every day without realizing until you can't do it. And then after that, it's like being a baby again, of learning how to walk, to talk, to use knife and forks. It was all those little things. But the big one for me was the pain. The pain was an everyday thing. That was my biggest challenge. And every day I just had to keep telling myself, you can do this. This is my achievement today. You're going to go and do multiple little things. And once I've done it, that was my achievement. But as the years have gone on, I've been pushing myself that little bit more, that little bit more. Yes, I've had to reach out to many professionals to try and get a bit more help, to get a bit more recollection of what it is I wanted to get to my main big goal. And it's taken a lot longer, but every day has been that achievement. And it's not until very recently, say six weeks ago or so, where I qualified to, I was able to have a procedure done, to have a device fitted to actually help manage my pain. And that now, even though it's still early stages, it's helping. And now my goals are getting bigger. My achievements are getting bigger. And every day I think, you know, I'm glad I stuck through this. I'm glad I pushed myself. I fought through all the low days just to get where I am now, and to know now that I can still achieve more through life. But for every day now, I don't take for granted one little thing, just nothing. Even getting up just to brush my teeth or just have a quick shower or something. I do not. I appreciate everything I do. Every single day is an achievement for me.